The great hall of Winterfell was heavy with tension. Outside, the wind howled across the north, bringing with it the smell of snow and the promise of a long, hard winter. Inside, all eyes were fixed on Daenerys Targaryen, the Dragon Queen, as she sat across from Bran Stark, the boy who had become something far stranger than a lord. Jon Snow stood between them, looking like a man caught between two raging seas. He had told Daenerys about Bran's strange gift, the visions, the knowledge of the past and the future, but she had been wary. People feared what they did not understand, and Daenerys had seen too much betrayal to trust easily. But Bran, calm as still water, didn't blink. "You want the throne," he said in his quiet, almost distant voice. "But the throne will not matter if the dead win. You will need me to see them coming, to see their weaknesses." Daenerys tilted her head, watching him as if he were a puzzle. "And why would you help me?" she asked. "Because," Bran replied, "I've seen the future where we stand apart, and you burn everything," his pale eyes fixed on hers. "I've also seen the one where you win without becoming a monster. But in that future we fight together." The words hit her harder than she expected. She thought of the fire in her blood, the fury that had always carried her forward, the endless whispers of Mad King's daughter. She wanted to believe she could be more than her father's shadow. "What do you want in return?" she asked. Bran's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "Nothing for myself. Only that you remember you are here to free people, not rule them in fear." Jon watched the two of them, surprised. He had expected Daenerys to argue, maybe even threaten. Instead, she seemed to be thinking deeply, her gaze dropping for a moment before returning to Bran. "Very well. We fight together." And in that quiet moment a new alliance was born, one that could change the ending of the war and perhaps the fate of the Seven Kingdoms. Outside, somewhere far beyond the walls, the dead marched through the snow. The days after that meeting were strange for Winterfell. Word spread quickly that the Dragon Queen and the strange boy in the wheelchair had struck some kind of pact. Many didn't understand it. Some feared it. But Jon knew was the only way they stood a chance. Daenerys began visiting Bran in the Godswood, where he spent most of his time under the old weirwood tree. She would stand in her thick furs, watching the pale face carved into the bark while Bran spoke about things that had not yet happened. "The Night King will try to break you before he breaks your army," Bran said one morning, his voice carried by the crisp winter air. "He will send the dead after your dragons first. He knows they're your strength." Daenerys' jaw tightened. "Then we keep them safe until the right moment." Bran's gaze drifted away, as if looking at something she could not see. "It's not enough to protect them. You must use them in a way he will not expect. The dead cannot fear, but the Night King can be surprised." For the first time, Daenerys felt like she was playing a game she could win, not just with fire and blood, but with strategy. She had always relied on her dragons to overwhelm her enemies. Now she was learning to think several moves ahead. That evening, she gathered her council, Jon, Tyrion, Sansa, Arya, and even Theon, who had returned to fight for the North. Bran was brought into the hall, and all eyes turned toward him. "You trust him?" Sansa asked Daenerys, her tone careful but sharp. "I do," Daenerys replied, her voice steady. because he sees more than any of us. And right now, seeing is surviving. Bran told them of the Night King's approach, of the traps they could set, and of a moment that would come when the enemy would be most vulnerable. He did not give them every detail. Some things, he said, could not be spoken without changing them. That made Daenerys uneasy, but she held her tongue. Later that night, Jon found her standing alone in the courtyard, staring up at the dark sky. "You're really trusting him," Jon said quietly. She glanced at him. "I have to. He offers me a future where I win without turning into what everyone fears I'll become. I want to believe in that." Jon studied her face. "Then you'd better be ready, because if Bran's right, the next few days will decide everything." Above them, the cold wind carried a faint, haunting sound. Somewhere far away, the dead were drawing closer. The snow fell heavier the next day, swallowing the landscape in a pale silence. The people of Winterfell worked tirelessly, hauling wood, sharpening weapons, and reinforcing the walls. But the air was thick with a different kind of weight, the awareness that their enemy was not a man, but death itself. Bran sat beneath the weirwood, his face calm but his eyes far away. Daenerys came to him again, this time with no guards, no advisers, just her and the strange, broken boy, who somehow knew more than anyone alive. "You have a plan," she said without preamble. Bran blinked slowly, like someone waking from a dream. "Yes, but it's dangerous, and it will ask more of you than anyone else." Daenerys' chin lifted slightly. "I am not afraid of danger. It's not just danger," Bran replied. "It's trust. You will need to follow it exactly, even when it feels wrong, even when every instinct in you screams to do otherwise." Daenerys stepped closer, her breath visible in the cold. "Tell me." Bran looked past her shoulder, as though seeing the battle unfold in some invisible space. "The Night King will not come for your throne. He will come for me. I am the memory of this world. If he destroys me, he destroys the truth of mankind. That is his true goal. You must let him come. You must make him think he will succeed." Daenerys frowned. "You're asking me to use you as bait?" "Yes," Bran said simply. She shook her head. If I die, the war is over anyway," Bran interrupted softly. "Your dragons, your army, even Jon, they cannot kill him without the right moment. I will give you that moment." Daenerys was silent for a long time. She had faced slavers, assassins, and kings, but this felt different. This was not a fight. She could win by charging in. This was a fight of patience, of precision. That night, the War Council gathered again. Bran explained enough for them to understand. They would draw the Night King into the heart of Winterfell. Daenerys and her dragons would remain hidden until Bran signaled through one of his visions. Then, and only then, would they strike. The reaction was mixed. "You want to lure the Night King inside the walls?" Sansa's voice was sharp with disbelief. "Do you have any idea what you're risking?" "Yes," Bran replied. "Everything." Arya leaned back in her chair, her eyes darting. "Between Bran and Daenerys. And if the plan fails?" Daenerys' voice cut through the room like a blade. "Then we all die." Silence followed, cold and heavy dot in the days that followed. Daenerys spent more time with Bran than she expected. Not in long conversations. Bran rarely wasted words, but in quiet moments where she learned to read his stillness. Sometimes he would speak of her future, not in detail, but in threads of warning. "There are choices you will face after this war," Bran said one evening as the sun sank low over the snowy fields. "Choices about power and mercy." Daenerys narrowed her eyes. "You think I will become like my father?" "I think," Bran said, "that power always tempts. Even those who swear they will use it only for good. I see both paths ahead. Of you, the one where you keep your promise to free people, and the one where the throne consumes you." His words stayed with her longer than she wanted to admit. On the eve of battle, Daenerys walked through the camp where his soldiers rested beside fires, their faces drawn with exhaustion. She paused by Grey Worm, by Missandei, by the Dothraki, who had followed her across the sea. They had put their faith in her, and now she had to put hers in a boy who could see the future. That night, she went to the Godswood one last time. Bran was there, of course, the red leaves swaying gently above him. "I will do as you ask," she said quietly. "But if this fails—" "It won't fail," Bran interrupted, though his voice was softer than before, "because you will be there at the right moment. I've seen it." She gave a small nod. "Then tomorrow we change the ending." When dawn came, Winterfell was ready, or as ready as it could be. The air was so cold it felt like knives against the skin. From the battlements they could see the horizon turning white, not from snow, but from the endless ranks of the dead. Jon stood beside Daenerys, his hand resting on Longclaw's hilt. "Stay hidden until you see Bran's sign," he reminded. Daenerys looked toward the Godswood, where Bran waited calmly beneath the tree. He looked impossibly small in the vast field of snow, yet in that moment he was the most important piece on the board. The horns sounded. The ground began to tremble under the march of thousands. The battle for Winterfell had begun. The first impact was sound, a distant rolling drumbeat of footsteps shaking the frozen ground. Then came the sight, endless shapes moving through the snow, pale faces, blue eyes burning in the cold. The dead had arrived. Winterfell's defenses, lit up with fire arrows. The first wave of the undead met the sharpened stakes and burning trenches, but they did not scream. They simply kept coming, climbing over one another like ants. From her hidden position beyond the castle's western wall, Daenerys sat astride Drogon. Rhaegal waited nearby, restless under Jon's control. The dragons were uneasy. They could smell the death in the air. Every instinct in her screamed to take off, to rain fire down upon the enemy. But Bran's words echoed in her mind. Wait. For the moment Dot and the Godswood, Bran was still. His eyes rolled back in the white of his visions. Theon and his men stood guard around him, gripping their bows. They did not understand exactly what Bran was doing, only that they had to keep him alive at all costs. Inside the castle walls, chaos churned. The Unsullied fought in perfect formation, their spears holding back wave after wave. The Dothraki, what remained of them, darted through openings, cutting down the dead with quick, brutal strikes. Arya moved like a shadow on the walls, loosing arrows, then vanishing before anyone could track her. Sansa stood with the non-fighters in the crypt, her hand tight around a dagger she prayed she wouldn't need to use. Even here the fear was thick. The distant screams and thuds of battle felt like they were getting closer. Up above, Daenerys clenched Drogon's reins so hard her knuckles ached. She could see the dead swarming in waves, overwhelming the trenches. The fire line was breaking. "We should go now," she muttered under her breath. Jon's voice came through the wind. "Not yet." Bran said. "I know what he said," she snapped. "But if we wait much longer," and then she saw it, a shape moving differently from the rest, tall, cold, regal. The Night King, riding an undead Viserion, cutting through the air like a phantom. Her heart pounded. This was the man, the thing, that had haunted her dreams since she first heard of him. "Jon," she said, her voice low, "he's here." The Night King was not coming for the walls. His eyes were fixed on one place. The gods would doubt in that moment. Daenerys understood the trap. Bran had been right. The Night King's arrogance would bring him into their reach. But the risk was terrifying. Every step he took toward Bran meant more dead pouring into the heart of Winterfell. Theon's arrows struck at the White Walkers flanking the Night King, but it was like trying to stop a storm with feathers. The enemy cut through the trees, drawing closer to Bran with each passing breath. Daenerys' blood was boiling. She wanted to strike now, to end this before Bran could be touched. But when she glanced toward the godswood from above, something strange happened. Bran's head turned slightly, as if he could feel her watching, and she saw the barest nod dot. It was not the nod of now. It was the nod of not yet. Her jaw tightened. She pulled Drogon back, forcing him higher into the clouds, out of the Night King's sight. Below, Jon was already moving Rhaegal toward the godswood to intercept. The two dragons circled in the sky, waiting. The Night King dismounted, his boots crunching in the snow as he walked slowly toward Bran. Every undead soldier around him moved in perfect rhythm, forming a wall of death. Theon's men fell one by one. Theon himself fought with a desperation Daenerys had never seen in him before, cutting down the dead as fast as he could dot. And then Bran moved. Not physically, but in that strange way of his. His voice carried inside Daenerys' mind, quiet but certain. Now the world became fire. Drogon dove from the clouds, his roar splitting the night. Flames engulfed the trees, tearing through the White Walkers like dry leaves. Jon swooped in from the opposite side, Rhaegal slamming into Viserion in a clash of teeth and claws. The Night King turned, his face unreadable as the fire surrounded him. For one breathless moment, Daenerys thought it was over, that he would burn like the rest. But when the flames cleared, he still stood. Her heart dropped. He lifted his hand, and the dead who had fallen moments earlier began to rise again. This was the danger Bran had warned her about. Striking too soon only gave him more soldiers. Through the smoke, Daenerys saw him take another step toward Bran. The trap had worked, but the killing blow had not. The Night King's ice spear appeared. In his hand, Theon, battered and bleeding, looked back at Bran one last time. Then he charged. It was hopeless, but it bought seconds. Daenerys now knew she could not waste. She urged Drogon forward again, fire building in his throat. Somewhere behind her, Jon shouted her name. The fate of Winterfell balanced on the next. Heartbeat dot the godswood was a storm of firelight and shadows. Drogon's wings sent snow swirling in great white whirlwinds as Daenerys landed hard beside Bran. The earth trembled beneath the dragon's weight, but the Night King did not flinch. His cold, pale eyes moved from the boy in the chair to the woman standing between him and his prey. "You came for him," Daenerys said, her breath turning to frost in the air. "You'll have to go through me." The Night King tilted his head slightly, as if amused. He stepped forward, the crunch of snow beneath his boots the only sound. Daenerys could feel it, the oppressive, unnatural cold that seemed to spread. From him like poison dot behind her, Bran's voice came, calm and unshaken. "It's not me he's here for, not truly." Daenerys turned her head slightly, not taking her eyes off the Night King. "What do you mean?" Bran's pale eyes met hers, and in them she saw something strange, not fear, but certainty. "He wants the fire that was never meant for this world. He wants your dragons, Daenerys. He wants you." The realization hit her like ice water. She thought she had been the bait's protector, but in truth she was part of the bait itself. The Night King had known she would come. Drogon growled, sensing the threat, but the Night King only lifted his hand. The air shimmered, and from the shadows more of his lieutenants appeared. Tall, silent, deadly, each carrying an ice forged. Blade John was still in the air with Rhaegal, locked in combat with Viserion. Arya was somewhere in the chaos of the castle walls. Sansa and the people in the crypt had no idea how close death was to claiming all of them. "You can still end this," Bran said quietly, "but it has to be my way." Daenerys clenched her fists. "Your way has already put half my army in the ground." "And it will save the other half," Bran replied. "Listen carefully. Fire won't kill him, not your fire. But there is a moment coming when the ice inside him will falter." Her voice dropped low. "What moment?" Bran's eyes seemed to look past her, into some invisible thread of time. "When he takes my hand." Daenerys' stomach twisted. "You want me to let him touch you?" "Yes," Bran said simply. "It's the only way to draw him close enough for what must happen next." Drogon shifted, uneasy. The Night King was still advancing, his pace slow but inevitable, the air growing colder with every step. Daenerys could feel her own instincts screaming against Bran's plan. Every part of her wanted to unleash Drogon's fire, to burn the enemy until nothing remained. But then Bran's words from days ago returned to her, even when every instinct in you screams to do otherwise. "Trust me." Theon was gone. His body lay in the snow, his last stand over. Only she and Bran remained between the Night King and victory. She stepped aside. The Night King's expression didn't change, but his pace quickened slightly. Behind him, the White Walkers closed in, forming a ring. Daenerys kept her hand on Drogon's flank, ready to strike the moment Bran gave the word. Her breath came fast, her eyes fixed on the Night King's every movement. And then it happened. The Night King stopped in front of Bran, towering over him. Slowly, deliberately, he reached down. His gloved hand, black leather over frost-bitten flesh, closed around Bran's wrist. The air cracked. A sound like shattering ice filled the godswood. Bran's eyes rolled back, not in pain, but in focus. Daenerys saw frost spread from the Night King's touch, racing up Bran's arm, but she also saw something else. The Night King's face twitched, just slightly, as if something deep inside him had been struck. Bran's voice came, but it was not to her. It was inside the Night King's mind. "I see you. I know what you were before all this." The Night King's other hand tightened, but Bran didn't flinch. "And now," Bran continued, "I give it back to you." Daenerys didn't understand until she saw it. In the reflection of the Night King's icy eyes, a flood of images appeared. A man in black armor, kneeling before the children of the forest. The moment the dragon glass was driven into his chest, the centuries of walking in endless cold. The humanity he had lost was being forced into him all at once. The Night King staggered. For the first time he looked uncertain. Now, Bran's voice snapped through the air. Daenerys didn't hesitate. She leapt on the dragon, his great wings snapping open. Fire exploded from his jaws, but this time she aimed not to engulf. She aimed to strike where Bran had broken the ice inside the Night King. The flames roared around him, golden and blinding, and the Night King dropped to one knee. His scream was not of rage, but of something far older loss. The White Walkers around him shuddered, their blue eyes flickering like dying lanterns. Daenerys could feel it. This was the closest anyone had ever come to ending him. But he wasn't finished yet. With a sudden burst of strength, the Night King hurled a spear of ice straight at Drogon. She pulled hard on the reins, the weapon grazing past his neck. The near miss rattled her, but she kept her focus dot below, Bran's. Face was pale, sweat beading on his brow. "One more moment," he gasped. "He's not broken yet." And in that instant, Daenerys realized this battle wasn't just about killing the Night King. It was about breaking his will. The next heartbeat would decide whether they had done enough, or doomed them all. The Godswood was no longer still. The air pulsed with heat and cold in equal measure. Drogon's breath clashing with the Night King's freezing aura, steam rising from the snow in violent bursts. Daenerys' heart pounded in her chest. She could feel Drogon's muscles twitch. Beneath her, ready to unleash another torrent of fire. Below, Bran's head was bowed, but his voice still carried, not in sound, but in something deeper. He was holding the Night King's mind in place, keeping him from retreating into the unfeeling shell that had made him unstoppable. "You are not only death," Bran's voice rang in the Night King's thoughts. "You are the man who was taken. You are the man who remembers." The Night King's expression was unreadable, but his stance was faltering. His hand on Bran's wrist loosened, and his eyes flickered, blue giving way, for just a breath, to the faintest trace of brown. Daenerys didn't understand the full extent of Bran's power, but she could see the effect. The Night King's army was stuttering in its assault. Across the battlefield, Whites froze mid-strike, their movements jerky and delayed. Even Viserion, locked in combat with Rhaegal, seemed momentarily unsure, his flight stalling in the air. But the White Walkers, the generals, began to close in again, moving to protect their master. Bran's voice came, tight with effort. "Daenerys, the throne means nothing if you let him rise again. You must end this now." She guided Drogon into position, the dragon's shadow spilling over the Night King and Bran. She could see it, the exact place where the frost inside him had cracked, the weakness Bran had forced open. The Night King finally turned to look at her fully. His voice, low and ancient, carried on the frozen air. "Fire will not save you, daughter of the Mad King." Daenerys met his gaze. Maybe not fire alone. And then she understood. She called out into the freezing wind, "Jon." Now, from the eastern sky, Rhaegal came diving, Jon gripping the saddle. He leapt before the dragon even touched the ground, Longclaw glinting in the moonlight. The steel was Valyrian old, forged in dragonfire, strong enough to cut through. The magic that bound the dead. The White Walkers moved to intercept, but Drogon swung his great head and sent a wall of flame roaring between them. Jon sprinted across the scorched snow, his eyes locked on the Night King dot at the same moment. Bran twisted his wrist in the Night King's grip, not to escape, but to force the icy hand closer to his chest. "Remember," Bran whispered, and for an instant the Night King's breath caught, his eyes widening as if he truly did remember. The pain, the fear, the life before death, that hesitation was all Jon needed. Longclaw's point drove forward, straight into the cracked place. Bran had opened. The sound was like a glacier splitting, sharp, deep, final. Blue light exploded from the Night King's body, racing outward in jagged lines. The scream that followed shook the very trees. It wasn't just the sound of a monster dying. It was the sound of centuries of ice shattering all at once. The White Walkers fell like statues breaking apart, their weapons turning to shards. Across the field, the Whites collapsed in heaps, their bodies lifeless for the final time. Viserion's wings gave one last beat before the dead dragon crumbled mid-air into frozen dust. The godswood fell into silence, broken only by the crackle of Drogon's breath and the ragged breathing of the living. Daenerys slid from Drogon's back, her boots crunching in the snow as she approached Bran. He was pale, almost ghostly, but alive. Jon pulled Longclaw free and stood back, his chest heaving. "It's done," Jon said quietly. Bran's eyes opened slowly. "For now." Daenerys frowned. "For now?" Bran turned his gaze on her, steady and knowing. "Killing him ends the dead, but it does not end the hunger for power in the living. The war for the throne will still come, Daenerys. You must decide if you will rule the way you promised, or the way they fear you will." She wanted to argue, to say that she was not her father, but the battlefield around her, littered with both the dead and the living who had fought for her, forced the words to stick in her throat. Jon stepped closer. "He's right. The dead were only one enemy. The rest, they're still out there." Daenerys looked at Bran, this strange boy who had turned the tide of the greatest battle in history. "You said you've seen the future. Do I win?" Bran's lips twitched in something that might have been a smile. "You live. Whether that feels like winning will be your choice." The next day the fires burned high in Winterfell's courtyard, sending black smoke into the sky. The bodies of the fallen were honored, their names spoken, their bravery remembered. Daenerys stood apart for much of it, watching the people, Northerners unsullied, Dothraki, share food and drink there, laughter and tears mingling in equal measure. She thought of the throne, of the red keep, of the iron chair made from 1,000 swords. She thought of the people here who looked at her with wary respect instead of devotion. That night she returned to the godswood. Bran was there, of course, his eyes fixed on something far beyond the stars. "You could come with me," she said softly, "to King's Landing. Advise me. Make sure I don't become what you're afraid of." Bran's gaze lowered to meet hers. "I will not leave the North, but I will see you even from here." She gave a small nod. "Then I will try to be the queen in the future you saw, the one who won without becoming a monster." Bran's expression didn't change. but his words were quieter now. "The future is not fixed, Daenerys, but tonight at least you have earned the chance to shape it." And for the first time since she had stepped foot in Winterfell, Daenerys felt not like a conqueror, but like something rarer, a survivor. Night King was gone. The living still had their wars. But for this one night, under the red leaves of the old gods, they had peace.